Prophet ﷺ instructing people from early age, "Allimu awladakum," yani teach your children al-rimaya. Rimaya here means archery, shooting at me. It literally means, but it means archery. Al-rimaya, was-sibaha, and swimming, wal-rukub al-khayl, and the riding of horses. That we know that they must relate to how do we temper or bring balance to the reality of the human being, such that those faculties, because they're very disparate, those faculties, yani contradicting from a perspective. But how do you make all of those faculties one with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and aligned with each other? And that's what the Prophet will show us. And the archery, as an example, archery relates to the mind, the human mind. Okay? So it's about bringing balance to the human mind, archery in and of itself. It's what's called tashheen al-dhihn. It's what sharpens the human intellect, archery in and of itself. Likewise also, wrestling. Wrestling is what? It relates to ghadab, it relates to anger. Anger that is inside of the human being. How do you temper anger? Number 2. Third of them, rukub al-khayl, and the riding of horses. That's desire. Rukub al-khayl. It's how do you begin to temper and bring balance to one's desire. Okay? And swimming, and it relates to something which is higher, which is what? The swimming, which relates to the human spirit. And how does the spirit now move into what you can consider to be the void, Fana, into a state of non-existence, swimming. Okay, how do you reduce yourself to zero, as we learn with swimming? When somebody, what the Prophet ﷺ, different types of swimming, and both of them he practiced, ﷺ. 2 types, you have what's called sibaha, and you have what's called aum. Sibaha and aum. And the sibaha is what we normally call swimming. Aum is what you call diving. And the sibaha is horizontal. Aum is vertical. And the Prophet ﷺ's itqan is in both, he perfects both, and we have traditions of him doing both. But his greater perfection and love was in an aum. Was in going what? The vertical relationship, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Because of the realities of the vertical relationship, and aum, yani khalas, entire mass is lifted. The human being becomes yani weightless, massless, nothing, reduced when he moves into the water in and of itself. And the Prophet ﷺ thereby gives us a higher philosophy, a higher meaning of all of these arts in and of themselves. And if you understand them at a more profound, philosophical, martial level, every single one of them is about reducing the human being to zero. It's about fana. And so you learn in archery, the first one we discuss in archery is how does the archer become one with the target? And how does he go into a state of fana? How does he become one with the target? Ultimately, you're not shooting at something beyond you, but you're shooting at yourself. Such that khalas, you enter into what's called the void, what's called fana inside of the reality of spirituality inside of Islam. Same with swimming, as we just learned. Swimming is about how do you become zero, massless. That's what the Prophet ﷺ perfected. From a child, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in the wells of Banu Najjar, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that he perfected aum from a child when he was 5-6 years of age, in the wells of Banu Najjar, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wrestling likewise. How does the wrestler become one with his opponent, so that he's able to manipulate the actual strength of his opponent? It's what's called the void in martial arts. The void in martial arts. And one of the works which people should read if they're into martial arts is a book called The Sphere of the 5 Rings. So in The Sphere of the 5 Rings, he will discuss what the higher philosophy of martial arts in and of itself. But the highest in that regard is martial artist, is how do you lose yourself in whatever discipline that you're actually practicing, which is the way of Islam in and of itself. Okay? Tell you, horse riding, similar. How do you become one with the horse? So we'll just look at some traditions, inshallah ta'ala, which inshallah maybe they'll spare us to become of those who sort of inculcate and take on these higher disciplines. And they are higher disciplines. On the authority of Uqba ibn Amir, as he said, I hear the Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say, and prepare for them all that you can muster of strength. Does not strength surely exist in archery? Does not strength surely exist in archery? Does not strength surely exist in archery? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. As Uqba ibn Amir, we've spoken with some students previously about the importance of the companions that relate to traditions. And you're not going to see a Sahaba like saying Uqba relate to tradition like that, say that he becomes a master archer. You're not going to see that. He's not going to hear the Prophet ﷺ counsel to something, so that he will embrace that which the Prophet ﷺ counsels. That's the jihad that we have. The jihad that we hear hadith after hadith after hadith, verse after verse after verse. But the problem is we fail to embrace. Khalas. They become sort of part-time realities, but not realities that we can give our all and give our time towards. Sayyidina Uqba, he said upon his death, he had 70 bows. 70 bows upon his death, radiallahu anhu warda. And they were not bows that are used in sport, but they were bows that are used in life, in the preservation and the maintenance of life, radiallahu anhu. Another tradition you see, saying Uqba, likewise, Ibn Amir, who said the Messenger of God ﷺ said, verily God will enter 3 types of people into paradise because of a single arrow. If the issue is paradise, then the hadith's clear. Because of a single arrow, the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah Ta'ala will enter 3 types of people into paradise. The one who made it, who anticipates good from his work, the one who shoots it, supposed to say, and the one who feeds it. The sani', the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who manufactures the arrow. Then the bower himself, the one who shoots the arrow. Then what's called the munbil. The munbil is the one who feeds the arrow, the one who gives the arrow to the shooter. That person. Just giving an arrow to the one who shoots it, khalas, that is khalas, a pathway to paradise for you. Okay. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, shoot and ride. And take to the bow and take to the horse, the Prophet ﷺ says. But to shoot is more beloved to me than to ride. The Prophet ﷺ, and there's an ikhtilaf between the ulama. What a beautiful ikhtilaf. Is the bow greater than the horse, or is the horse greater than the bow? Radiallahu anhum wa radahum. Because they're trying to extrapolate from the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every sport is false, baatil, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says. Hukm. For all of us who are going to play football and going to play basketball and play all these other types of dajjalic ball sports. I said, our life is to be shaped by the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So we become one with him, one with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And somebody who takes a ball and does something with the ball, they just merely distance themselves from him. They remain aloof from the Prophet himself sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That's quote unquote not the sports of kings. It's not the sports of kings inside the deen or inside of the dunya. But this, as we see today, we speak about archery, you speak about swords, you speak about horses, you speak about swimming, you speak about wrestling. To this day, they're still the sports of kings. This is sports of the aristocracy, inside of the mundane, inside of the dunya. And we have left it for what? The aristocrats of the world, rather than what? Reclaiming it for the aristocrats of the next world. We ask that Allah Ta'ala gives us what greater sense. Every sport is false, baatil, he says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Kalam sadiq al-masduq. There are only 3 praiseworthy sports. A man training his horse, his instigation of play with his family, and his shooting with his bow and arrow. The Prophet ﷺ said, verily they are from the real, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whoever intentionally leaves archery after having been taught it, then it is a blessing that they have left, or he said, ﷺ, a blessing that they have denied. He said, ﷺ. That type of tradition suffices. Not for us just to pick up a bow, but to try to be like saying the Uqba ibn Amir and to die with 70 bows. To expend our time with the bow and with the arrow. Look at the Sahaba radiallahu anhum wardahum. When the Sahaba, yatajafa junuba al-madaji', where would you find the Sahaba radiallahu anhu at any specific time of the day? They were so regulated, disciplined, marshaled radiallahu anhum wardahum. In the midst of the night you will find them with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we learn, by the end of the night you'll find them with Allah ta'ala in istighfar. Midst of the night with Allah in prayer. End of the night with Allah Ta'ala and seeking forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Come Fajr, you'll find them Ruk'a' sujood inside of the masjid with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After Fajr, you find them dhakireen Allah kathira wa dhakira, making dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Come Ishraq, you find them yaqumun, stand for salah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Straight after that, then khalas, they bring out their bows. Marshal, radiallahu ta'ala anhum wardahum. And it's straight after prayer at Ishraq, you'll find the companions, radiallahu anhum wardahum, shooting and shooting and shooting. Such that we have traditions that Sahaba would shoot from Ishraq till Maghrib. Shoot from Ishraq to Maghrib, radiallahu anhum wardahum. Arrow after arrow after arrow after arrow after arrow, until they achieve that type of Fana, that type of annihilation inside of the target in and of itself. Radiallahu anhum wardahum. On the authority of Sa'id ibn Musayyib, on the authority of Abu Dhar, who said that the Messenger of God ﷺ said, whoever walks between 2 targets will have a good deed for every step that he takes. We know about every step that you take going to Jum'ah. Raft, we know that. The one who walks, Yamshi, Jum'ah, every step that he takes to the masjid, the mosque of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has a good deed for every single step. And here the Prophet ﷺ is speaking about every step that you take between 2 targets. And the two targets here mean the Sahaba radiallahu anhum wardahum, in order to ensure their proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was hastened, that the archer, he has a target beside him and a target on the other side. So whenever he shoots, when he gets to that side, he's not coming back, no time wasted. When he gets to the other side, he shoots in the opposite direction. Gets here, shoots in that direction, shoots. But the greater meaning for them is two things. One, every step I take is a reward. But it's a reward greater than going to the masjid. Why is it greater than going to the masjid? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, between two targets, it's rawdah min riyadh al-Jannah. It's a medal from the medals of paradise. And so the Sahaba, as we'll see, radiallahu anhum wardahum, used to linger in that part. Linger and laugh around and pushing each other, laughing in the midst of it, radiallahu anhum wardahum. Why? Because in the midst of paradise at this point in time, when they're between two targets, radiallahu ta'ala anhum wardahum. Okay? On the authority of Hisham ibn Urwa, on the authority of his father, on the authority of Aisha, who said the Messenger of God ﷺ said, whenever depression takes root in any one of you, then one but needs to take one's bow, such that through it one's depression is abated. You know, people like 2020, we're going to have the biggest killer of men, which is depression. That's what they tell us now. Who? They call themselves. And we have who? Allah. They have WHO, WHO, the World Health Organization. And they tell us by the year 2020 that depression is going to be the #1 killer in man, the second killer in women. Take to the bow, the Rasul said, just take to the bow and have the higher purpose. The Prophet ﷺ says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has rendered one of the doors for removing depression and anxiety, struggle, jihad, he said sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And somebody who engages in any type of sort of art that is a higher martial art, then mashallah tabarakallah, they're not going to be a person of depression. They're not going to be a person of anxiety. Araftum? Whenever depression takes root in any one of you, then one but needs to take to one's bow, or take to your bow, such that through it one's depression is abated, is removed. The Prophet ﷺ said.